And we're live. It's the Mindstate Marketing Hour with Will Leach. Who's Will Leach? He's the author of a book that if you haven't read, I don't know what's wrong with you. What are you doing? When do you get up out of bed? How do you face the world if you haven't read Will's book, Marketing to Mind States? Will, how are you, brother?
Hey, doing well, Steve. It's a little bit cloudy and rainy here in Dallas today, but we can use some of the rain. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you for asking. It's a beautiful fall day. The leaves are starting to change. It's started to be windy here, but all good. I've got a little bit of a long sleeve on instead of my usual t-shirt.
I just started doing that yesterday. I started feeling a little bit colder in the room. And so I'm like, yeah, we're about that time of year where, every day you have your extra layer jacket on, your little heater by your feet.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, let's welcome everybody. I'm Steve Brown, the co-host. And today, I look forward to this. This is the Mindstate Marketing Hour. Will's book. All this is prefaced on the insights from Will's book. And we go through every day and we approach decisions in a state of mind, and we're not in the same state of mind all day long. Our states of mind change. But usually when we approach a certain solution, we tee up in a certain state of mind. And as a marketer, if we can understand that, then imagine how you could tweak your messaging to really connect and communicate to those folks, considering your solution that I understand you, and you're safe, and we're going to help you find what's best for you. And marketing's broken.
It is.
And that doesn't exist very much. And when people run into it, that's why they like, I like this. I'm wearing their shirt now. And why is it? It's because we start to see them as a part of our self-identity. And your book, Marketing the Mind States, can help a brand bridge that gap.
Very well said. Very well said. Thank you, Steve.
So today we got an interesting topic, and it's the things I wished I would have known before starting my first business. Are we going to cry? Is this a confession session?
I don't know. It doesn't have much to do with psychology, but I get asked this question. I don't know about you, Steve, a small business owner out there. I get asked the question at least 3 times a month. Basically once a week, somebody will email or somebody say, man, I'm thinking about starting my own business. What advice would you give me? Or, what should I do? And they'll just ask about the business. And after a while, you start thinking about, we've been on a journey, you and I, you longer than I have for sure. But there's a couple of things that I've learned. And I started thinking to myself, when people ask me that question, of course, you want to default to all the great things. And there are some great things that we're going to talk about for sure. But there are also some things I was like, man, you know what? If I wish I would have known this beforehand, I would have either started my company differently or had different expectations. So this is one of those examples of when there's so many books, there's so many websites about, amplifying how great it is to be a small business owner. And they'll talk about becoming a billionaire. And there's so many books about that. Very rarely do I ever see a book that tells you, here are some pitfalls. Here are some things you better know before you go into business so you can prepare for them. So that's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah. Oftentimes I think about, if you would ask me, you think about, I was sitting working at another agency and I saw the things that I felt should be addressed and fixed. And so I would sit and murmur a little bit. He should do this, he should do that. And at one point I thought, that's not fair, because if you're so smart, then you shouldn't be sitting here murmuring and complaining about how this fellow's running his business. If you're so smart, you should go out and do it that right way. And then the other little voice would go, no, but that's scary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. That was not the reason why I left a nice job at a large company, PepsiCo. It was something similar. I found that there is an issue in marketing. And for me, it was the classic, I want to try to change my organization internally. And I started to do that, working and bringing behavioral sciences into PepsiCo. But then just like anything else in a large company, you get lost in the shuffle. You get buried behind other people's initiatives and their own kind of plans for the company. And the big kicker for me was when I was being kind of asked, would I consider going to Chicago to help run oatmeal research? And for me, that was enough to say, no, I found a passion here. And though I don't know what it means to be an entrepreneur, I knew I didn't want to go and run oatmeal, and do oatmeal. God love oatmeal, but it wasn't for me. So for me, I didn't know what I was going into. I didn't really have a chance to think about it. I just jumped in and I learned some lessons, by doing that, frankly.
Yeah. I feel that like the invisible heroes of our time, our economy at least, are these entrepreneurs. And they're guys like you and me or girls that were stupid enough to think that they could step out and run a business, hire people, create a product, sell it, service it, invoice it, collect it, comply with taxes, comply with HR, comply with all these things. If we would have really sat down and thought about all the things we need to be good at,
I bet. I'm with you. I love that idea of the invisible hero, because I'm a huge, and we've talked about this on the show before. I am a firm believer that the middle class will be built by entrepreneurs. And this idea that, we're going to bring back a manufacturing middle class or whatever, I don't believe that's true. I think if we really want to raise the status of, any people that feel marginalized, whether in the lower tax brackets or lower income brackets or the middle class, it's going to be through running businesses. Why? It's because technology allows us to do it. I mean, Steve, you introduced me to new technologies once a week almost. And all of these technologies are being built to allow people like you and I to go build something on our own without the heavy investment that it used to be, where you used to have to go mortgage your house or go borrow money from your parents or cash out on stock. Nowadays, it's not like that. And because technology is there, it allows everybody to be an entrepreneur. And because of that, I firmly believe anyways, it's the invisible heroes. It's the mom and pops. It's the one-man solopreneurs. It's the 10-person shops that are going to right our country. I mean, both financially, it's going to right it, but it's also, I think, sociologically, and for a lot of problems exist in the world because we don't have enough entrepreneurs that are focused on changing society for the better. And so I firmly believe there's so many great, silent or invisible heroes out there that we need to create even more and support those that are out there right now grinding it out every day.
I was shocked by a statistic, but the essence of it is that like over probably around 50% of the employed people in the U.S. economy work for a company that has 20 or less employees.
Yep. Yeah.
And when we think of business, we think of GM, we think of Uber, we think of these big entities that get all these special things from the government, incentives and grants and all these things. And yet, no, most of the folks work for little businesses like yours and mine. Mm-hmm. And that's how important this is. That's a lot of paychecks. That's a lot of homes. That's a lot of cars. That's a lot of kids going to school. That's a lot of kids going there. That's a lot at risk if this part of our economy gets crushed.
Yeah. And I'd argue that I don't know if I've been alive in an administration that really focused on small businesses, because the political power structure is, lobbyists work for the major companies and they're the ones who get the incentives and the tax breaks and stuff like that. And I'm sure we get some fair share. I don't know if it's even fair. We get some share of that stuff. But, I always thought to myself, remember, you were just saying you were just talking about well, if you could do it better, why don't you jump in? Every so often I'll talk to Melanie about this. I'll say, if I was president of the United States, I would absolutely focus on two things. First thing would be education. I would pour money into education in every facet you can imagine. And secondly, I would pour money into small businesses. I would make it easier to get loans. I would make it easier to get technology, easier to cut regulations on small businesses again and again, because I firmly believe that with education comes a stronger middle class, and with entrepreneurship comes a much stronger middle class and society. It's so funny. I don't know of administration right now that has done that, not to the ability as it should be, or we'd see a lot more people like you and I, kind of trying to change things.
We need to band together to become like a big business, at least as far as a lobbying or influence. But that's a whole nother different.
That is a whole other thing. So
okay, so here's the thing: entrepreneurship. You see it on Instagram. You see all these influencers. You see all these folks, and it's really teed up as this sexy, aspirational thing that I'm going to be a thought leader. I'm going to be an expert. I'm going to go out and be a business coach. I'm going to start a business, my first business, and I'm going to be a business coach.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and a millionaire business coach at that. You're only going to service millionaires.
And I see it all the time, but I think about, what they're not thinking about. You've got this here is that, let me tell you, the grass may seem greener on that. I'm going to be my boss. I'm going to make my schedule. What that really means is your schedule is going to push you around, and you're going to have to show up and do everything.
That's so true, man. I remember, when I first got out, that was one of the big sells, is that, well, now you're going to have more control over your life. And in maybe some elements, you kind of do, or maybe you can move a meeting, that was in the afternoon, to the morning so you can get off early. But there are just as many meetings that happen when I need to go talk to somebody in Russia, which means I'm waking up at 2:00 in the morning. There are just many meetings. Just happened to me today, as a matter of fact, where I had a personal phone call with somebody I hadn't talked to in a while. And I literally just before the show, I said, hey, client says they can only meet at 3:00 today. I'm so sorry. I wrote, entrepreneurship is a game of suffering. If you follow tennis, Rafael Nadal talks about tennis being a game of suffering. And I think it's a nice kind of idea to keep in mind, that everybody is suffering. I want to say this as clear as I can. Everybody is suffering. We tend to think, I think, that the grass is always greener. The grass, oh man, if I could just have what they have, if I could just be like Steve and what he's doing, things would be better. So I got a couple of stories about this, of where I thought the grass was greener, just to find out that I came to this realization that we all believe that the other person is doing so much better than we are. A couple of years ago, I was going through an acquisition, and it was and I met with a guy to talk to him about this acquisition. And he was the CEO of a really big multi-$100 million research company. And he said to me, Will, you got it so good being small. Look at me. I've got all these employees. I have to deal with taxes, tax law globally. I have to deal with lawsuits. He's like, man, if I could only go back to what you have, I would never try to grow my company if I would have known. And I was thinking to myself, that you're the company that I want to go work with. Like, you're the company, like that I was striving for you. And he looked at me as being where he wanted to take his company. He thought the grass was so much greener on my side. And I was thinking to myself, you have all the resources, you have all the liquidity, you have reach and power. And I don't have that as a small business. And so it was kind of an example there. I thought to myself, even though I was striving to go work for him, he was at the same time thinking, man, if I could only go back to where I was like you, and we could get our company to be small like yours. And another one just happened was I'm friends with a podcast company or group that had recently just made it. I mean, they're big. They're getting really, really big. And I was on a call with them, and we were about to go live, and we had like 10 minutes to talk. And in my mind, I'm like, they just blew up. Big company, big podcast. It's getting thousands of listeners every week now. It's going up. It's going almost viral. And I was so excited for them. I was asking them how it was going. They're like, no, how are you doing? Like, Wayne, we're doing terrible. It's just horrible. Like, we're not making any money. And in my mind, I was thinking, my gosh, you guys made it. You guys made it. Behind the scenes, they were asking me, how are you making money? How can we do better? Like, what advice would you give us? And I was literally in shock, because I was thinking, you guys made it. Thousands of subscribers, tens of thousands of listeners. They weren't. So my point being, be careful about thinking that the grass is always greener, because I now that I'm in business, we all suffer in our own ways. Whether if you're big, you're too complex and you don't get to live your dreams. If you're small, you're too small and you're pushed around. We all suffer every day. And so, that's just my experience. But what I thought about here is that if you anchor onto anyone's business or their success for your happiness, or you think that's where you want to be, realize that that's a terrible, terrible anchor, because they are suffering. We're all suffering in our own way. So I thought, you and I have talked about this. Your happiness is in direct relationship to what you anchor on and to how you kind of view situations, the meaning you give situations. Mm-hmm. So if you anchor yourself on a company, you don't know behind the scenes the suffering they're having. So you better anchor on to your company and where you were previously a year ago and to where you are today. And that's where true happiness comes. It really does. Because just as any business owner, we all have struggles. I don't care who you are. We all have struggles.
This point here, don't count on your past friends for business, or at least not for the long term. Part of the suffering, the segue from suffering to this, is that oftentimes I wish you go through the day and you'd like to be in the best state of mind when you approach a decision. But guess, decisions come to you like mosquitoes on your windshield or bugs on the windshield. That's how the decisions come to you. And you have to make a call no matter what state of mind you're in, right? Mm-hmm. And there are oftentimes I wished I could have someone that I could talk about with this, but bottom line, they're not going to be there. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to make the call, and you're going to have to be comfortable with that and kind of get settled in, but you just never feel like, yeah, that was the best decision. I was in the best mood. You always just have to make the best call you can in that moment and live with it.
Yeah, I had all the information I needed. I was able to do cost benefit, to analysis, and I'll feel good about this a year from now. Yeah, very, very rarely. It's all gut feel. It's intuition. Certainly, you hope you have data, but it doesn't ever seem to work that way. It's funny. And we're going to talk a lot about support networks in a little bit, because I think it's an under leveraged and a really crucial thing you need to do psychologically is have a support network of some kind. For me, it's funny. When I left PepsiCo, what I thought was, listen, I've had a 15-year run in corporate America. I've had 10 years here at basically PepsiCo. I know the players. I'm well respected. I'm just going to basically call on PepsiCo. It's got hundreds of brands, technically, right? I could go work at just being a consultant to them. And so you set up shop, and then you're like, you take a week, to get your stuff ready. And then hey, let's go take you out to lunch. Let's go take out some of my former colleagues to lunch. And they go to lunch with you. That's cool. And you talk a little bit about it. Yeah. And you talk about how we should be working together. Great. And what I found and I've talked to other people about this too. And I want if you found this, is that if you think that your past colleagues in your past business, your past life are going to hire you, you better not be so sure about that. And I don't believe it's because they don't like your work, right? I had beers every Friday with the head of Insights, who was arguably my best friend at Frito-Lay, for the better part of 3 years, every Friday. And we talked about business. We talked about what's going on over at Frito-Lay. And I didn't get one project. Why? It's not because he didn't think I was good. We had beers every day. It's not because he didn't like me. It's because he didn't see me in that role. Remember, you and I talk about roles. I was still Will Leach, director of Insights. I was not Will Leach, CEO of this brand new consultancy. And so when projects came up, he didn't think about me. So my point is that don't be surprised if you get out on business and you think you're going to call on your old business and you're going to get jobs from them. Maybe you will. And if you are, you're very, very lucky. I would say don't count on that long term. I've seen too many of my friends who got their first project with their old boss. And then after a while, out of sight, out of mind, you go away. You're not as sexy anymore. The kind of the being nice to you, it's done. And so that's why I had to really quickly learn about creating a sales pitch. Because before, I don't know about you, I never had a sales pitch, right, Steve? Like I just kind of thought I was going to work with my old boss. Like I was going to basically do it on the side. And so I didn't have a sales pitch. I didn't know how to talk to people who didn't know me about my business and about what I wanted to do. I had to learn that skill set, and I had to learn it on the fly because I had no revenues coming in from my old friends. So did that ever happen to you? Did you ever kind of go back to your old agency and think as a contractor you can help them out, or did you ever run into that situation?
No, in my case, I didn't want to take customers from his business, right?
Yeah.
So I crossed that bridge right away and just kind of planted that flag. I'm going to get my own stuff,
Wow.
and I need to stand on my own. And you have to make that decision in here.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? It means you need to see yourself as that. Now, thank goodness I had some reputation in the community where I had several people that did come to me right away when they knew that I had done that.
Yeah.
Okay, when I had started that. I even have one client, God bless her, she's been with me now 9 years to this month.
Wow.
But she showed up. She was my very first customer, and that started off. So that was something that I needed to embrace, is that if I'm going to do this, then I'm not going to bring old customers with me.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go get my own. And so from the beginning, that's the way it began. But there was even an evolution from how I thought it was going to be to how it really was going to be.
Yeah. I know some people out there probably said, no, I've already lined up my friends are going to hire me. And I totally get it. I also know that I have a couple of friends who have thought that, and about 3 years in, they had 80% of their business on their best friend's business. And then the best friend got let go, or they moved to another company. And the other company is like, we don't need that. We don't need what you think. So be careful about that, guys. If you are lucky enough to have where your friends, your former colleagues, somebody is giving you, a lot of your business, be careful. Be very, very careful about that, because like I said, out of sight, out of mind. And oftentimes, like, I think you don't necessarily come to mind as a business owner to them. You come to mind as their former friend. And sometimes that'll cost you.
Yeah. And the other point I would make on that is that you need to see, at least in my case, is like, I couldn't just see myself as a local business. I needed to see myself as a national/international, because there's this, I think it's a verse in the Bible, as the good book says, a prophet is not a prophet in their own hometown. And so even what you're an expert at is diminished because they knew you when you were a pimply faced kid.
Yeah.
Right. Or when you worked somewhere else. So it's hard for them to envision you in this new role. And that's why you need to see yourself as, I need to go make my own way.
You can make your own way. Yeah, it's critical.
So I don't understand this here. You're crazy. Don't build a business on your expertise. What?
Yeah, and I should
noviceness.
No. I should have capitalized your. That's an issue I ran into, and I hear about this issue all the time with small business owners. What they do is they had a specific skill set, and they became experts in that skill set. And at some point they said, okay, I'm going to take that skill set, my expertise, I'm going to start a business on it. And what happens is, hey, there you go, on your expertise. What happens in that is that if you are building everything around what the knowledge is in your head and your experience, so you're a coach, or you're a consultant, a business consultant, or you are maybe even an author, honestly, but it's coming out of your head. It actually, at first, it's really cool because you get a lot of esteem where people want to work with you because you're the expert. The problem with that is that they only want to work with you. Why? Because you are the expert. So first off, it's not scalable. So I started Trigger Point on this desire to radically change marketing through the use of behavioral sciences. And so I created this Mindstate model. And in 2016, this is before the book, Steve, in 2016, I had a company, me and my best friend and somebody, so maybe 2.5, I had a contractor. And we were doing so much business for 2 people, in the millions, in fact. But I was smoked emotionally at the end of 2016, traveling internationally because people wanted Will Leach to fly to their meetings to pitch. They wanted Will Leach on the calls. They wanted Will Leach to write the report. They wanted Will Leach in the research, and they wanted Will Leach to present the research internationally oftentimes. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of cool at first, right? You get excited about that, but it's not scalable because at some point you run out of hours. And when I tried to push more projects over to my partner, but my best clients, the clients who knew me, like, yeah, I like him, but I want you. I'm hiring you. So I found out when you only push your expertise, you're not scalable. Secondly, you're not differentiatable. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. If you believe that you're differentiatable based on your expertise, you are living in a dreamland. Expertise is very easy to come by nowadays. Technology allows anybody to become an expert in anything, anytime, anywhere in the world. Not because they truly are experts. It's because they can say they're experts and you have no way of gauging it. Remember, you just said, when the 20-year-old says they can coach you on career advice, right, or whatever. That's one of the only times you can go, how would a 20-year-old be able to coach me on career advice? But outside of that, it's really tough. I mean, everyone says they're experts these days. So it's not differentiatable. So if you're only going to separate yourself from your level of expertise, I'm telling you, that's a tough road ahead. So we talked about you have to create a vision and you have to become an iconic. And with a compelling vision plus your expertise, I think you have a point there. But you cannot just use expertise. And then it's not sellable. So I think I was telling you a little while ago that I was going to be acquired by a company a couple of years ago. And it was flattering. It was exciting, a big multinational company. And I was in a meeting in France. And we hadn't signed the paperwork yet, but we're basically talking about the capabilities. We're well down the path of, they're doing due diligence. We're pretty close. We're only a couple of weeks away. And I wanted to talk more about my model. Like, that's my intellectual property. And I want to talk more about the technology that I have. I have some artificial intelligence that'll help you identify these mind states using data. And I want to talk about this stuff. And I could tell the room was just bored. And I kept thinking in my head, Steve, I'm going, well, you're buying the company. Don't you want to learn more about the model? And I didn't say this, but I knew something was wrong. And it wasn't until about, 2 or 3 weeks later that I realized in some negotiations, technically they were not buying my brand. They were not buying my model. They were not buying the book. They were not buying my technology. They were buying me. And the reason I found that out is because in the term sheet, it says that I would have to, if I left the company, I could not compete for 7 years in my own industry, 7 years. And at that point, I'm like, what? And what they found is I was the most valuable asset in the entire company I built. Why? Because I was the asset that I never realized. I thought I had technology. I really didn't. I was the asset they were buying. And so they were locking me up, not the other stuff. So it's funny. They just didn't really care about the brand. They didn't care about the model. And in that point, I thought to myself, you know what? They're only buying me, and that is not a scalable solution in any stretch of the imagination. So my point being, don't build it just on you. Guys, if you're thinking about, designing your company, build around a visionary idea, not an expertise, a visionary idea. And mine, in this case, was mind states. And after that, build technology or people, put those people in place to where they can scale. So when somebody comes to buy you, or they want too many of your hours, right, Steve? You have people and assets. You can say, hey, these assets are here. They're not buying Will Leach. They're buying Trigger Point. They're not buying Steve. They're buying, ROI online.
Absolutely. That, you do have to earn your chops. And by the way, the comment on our haircuts is like, this is what being an entrepreneur can do to you.
That's right.
I used to have long hair.
And from memory, I'm Ryan. He may also be a highly skilled entrepreneur. Because from memory, he might have a follicle. You have to let me know on that, Ryan. I'm not sure about that. You might have some issues with your entrepreneurship and your hair too.
But you do have to pay your dues. You have to go to those meetings. You do have to travel. But what you should be doing, instead of basking in the affirmation of your value and that time, you need to go through that phase, but you need to be figuring out that once you run out of hours, you're going to run out of power. And what is it that what is your unique perspective that you can package and model that can be valuable, that you can build a team behind that to deliver it for you. And I had a conversation with the girl, like, she's super talented. She had this creative aspect. I could see she was a natural leader. But when I told her, I said, well, you need to consider that you're going to be a leader sometime, right? It really, it really offended her
Huh.
because she only saw herself as a one-person show. And
Yeah.
that are you saying that, she felt like maybe I was telling her that's what she needed to do. But what I was trying to get her to conceive is that, look, people look up to you.
Mhm.
It's just going to be expected of you by these folks. And at some point, you're going to need to do that. You need to recognize you have a unique thing that's really the higher value of what you're showing up for, other than just doing a creative task and then putting it to bed.
Yeah, absolutely, guys.
And you do pay a toll. You think you pay a toll at the place you work.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You pay a toll here, but guess what? You don't really clock out and go home and forget about it. This follows you and is there waiting for you when you wake up the next morning.
Yeah, I wish I would have known this. And this is real, and this is something I wish people talked more about. So when you leave your regular company and you go start your own thing, the first 2 to 3 weeks are awesome. Like, you're excited, and you're taking calls, and maybe you're going to have coffee, and you feel this new lifestyle is going on. Nobody ever told me about the massive emotional swings you can have almost on a daily basis, but certainly on a weekly basis. And at first, there's sometimes you can be excited, and guys, running your own business can be exciting. You can have wins. I've had incredible moments. Hey, Ryan. Yeah, that's exactly right. Vivid vision is a great way of starting to think about your business a different way. That's a great point, Ryan. Thank you. That I took a call on the steps of St. Peter's Square in Rome. That was a cool, awesome moment. I've also been outside in a library in the rain, crying, trying to get in to get Wi-Fi because I just wanted to see people. Right? Have you ever like you wanted to work in a library just so you could have human interaction, and that was pre-COVID, right? So there are times that I jump out of bed. I'm excited for the world, man. And you guys see me, this persona here as the excited guy. I love behavioral science. I love talking to you, Steve. And there are other times I lay in bed and I don't want to get out of bed that day. I don't have a reason to get out of bed. Mm-hmm. And nobody talks about that stuff, about when you're running a business, the highs and the lows, the times you self-doubt yourself. When, I got within one day of winning a multi-million-dollar project where I was going to beat out McKinsey as well as BCG, massive firms. And I had 3 people on my company and I didn't get it. That was a huge letdown. I mean, we had thousands of dollars. We flew out to San Francisco. So the excitement of that, but then there's huge letdowns. But then it's days afterwards. You're like, what did I do wrong? I just set up my team for failure. What are we going to do now? So anyways, my point is there is a psychological toll you're going to take every day. Isolation. There are esteem issues. You're going to feel smaller than ever you have in a small business. You are going to feel small, and you're going to be vulnerable to others because your clients are going to be able to swing you because they need something done by 4 o'clock, and you're going to feel compelled to do it because you need their revenues. And if that means you don't go to your kid's soccer game, that's what it means. That's what it means, guys. But we don't talk a lot about that. And what does that psychologically do to you, right? When you give up and you thought to yourself, when I run my own business, I'm going to have more time for my family, and realize, no, that's not always the case. Somebody's going to take that family away from you, and and it's going to hurt you as a dad. It's going to make you think about, what am I doing? What is it all for? Because ultimately you're here to do something, provide for your family. And people don't talk a lot about that, but it will be a psychological toll. Good things will happen, but also certainly some really bad esteem things will happen to you too.
Ryan says he thinks that you guys are at the same library crying.
It was terrible. Frisco Library. It was a nightmare. Yeah.
So, I think about that. I have to tell myself that everyone else is facing these same feelings. Like, again, you were saying it's greener on the other side and everybody's having a wonderful Instagram life.
Yeah.
But it's not true. And we have to require that we just know that showing up is what we need to be doing.
Yep.
Okay. You just have to show up every day, and that's where you win. The other person is having to fight that battle, especially if it's a competitor. You just show up one more day more than a competitor.
Yep.
But that's a hard road to hoe. Every day you get up and there's all these things you don't want to do.
Yep. So funny you said that, Steve. So I have a Post-it note, and on this Post-it note, one step closer. Mm-hmm. And I put this right there by my screen because I'm like, you're one step closer. You're one step closer. You're one step going. Every day you got to get yourself, you got to will yourself to get one step closer. Because there's lots of distractions in this world, man. There's a lot of distractions in this world. And if you can just get yourself one step closer, and to manage that emotion, I'll tell you that, I've had swings in my emotions depending on time of year, as well as projects, something like that. You can't really control it that well. But what I have found that works for me is having like a brag book or a brag file, because you get great emails. This one kind of cool thing that's happened to me. Like, never one time in corporate America did I get an email from, a vice president basically saying what a great, how I'm contributing to their lives. Like, I got a review, right? And hey, good job, Will, the pat on the back. I get emails from clients now saying, you changed my life. You changed my business. And there's something cool about that. Have that file. And I have a list, a brag book. And I just basically, it's my accomplishments. And I look at that a lot, especially in mornings where you don't feel very confident. You're like, but I've got some wins. You got to look at those wins, guys, to keep your emotions up, because the world is you get distracted in this world, and the world's a tough place. And if you only focus on the things that you're never going to be, kind of fulfilled in your business, and it's going to be a lot tougher. So anyways, do that. Do a brag book. That's helped me a lot in times when I don't really feel very confident in my own abilities. Brag books helped a lot.
So, Ryan's talking about you need to consider what type of business you want to run, when your clients run you and your business. There's a point, you're on a journey in the life cycle of a business. And there's another book by Les McCowan called Predictable Success. And I think it's imperative that you figure out where you are on your journey, so that you're not comparing yourself to businesses that are at a different stage. So if you're in the beginning, you're trying to prove your model, prove that what you think is a big deal is that you got customers that believe in you, people that work for you that believe in you. But at some point you need to start like dialing in, and now, all right, who's my best client? How do I manage these clients? But there's a time when it's a feast or famine at the beginning. So you need to discern where you are in that journey. And that's a good point that Ryan's put. And then you can start to discern what boundaries you can establish and what are your best kind of customers.
Yeah, I love the proactive nature of that. I wish I would have known that beforehand, right? I love it's like Ryan's talking to the audience as well, because I didn't set boundaries. My job was, I want to do behavioral science, and I got some advice from somebody, but I never really used it. But the advice was, be very clear on what you won't work on, because people are going to send lots of stuff your way. There's going to be lots of shiny objects. A little partnership over here. We should work together. We should blog. And I never really did that in the first couple of years. It took me a while before I realized that there's a lot of distractions. You wouldn't believe how many joint ventures we were going to do. I don't know about you, but there's always somebody doing a joint venture. Oh, we should work together. We should do a joint venture. And I was like, yeah, we should.
We should do a live stream together.
I hated it. I would do a bunch of work, figuring out how we could integrate, and realize that person didn't care. They didn't care at all. So, yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. Totally with you.
Okay, so guess what time it is? This is a great conversation. Well, I appreciate you suggesting it. And it really is something that, entrepreneurs are the invisible heroes of our economy. And they improve our lives with the products that they bring to us or the services that they do. Because why? They risked everything, their future, their family's future, and put it out there on the line. And so that's why I admire them so much, and I want to help them.
Well, Steve, yeah, let's also end on a high note.
Okay.
I wouldn't go backward I wouldn't go back to corporate America. Like, there is a reason why most entrepreneurs smile when they talk to other people who are just starting that journey, because ultimately they're like, it's working. Now, not everybody can say that, but hey, there are some great things about being your own business leader, your own owner of a business, right? Lots of great things, lots of great benefits. Even if you're not financially, becoming a millionaire, there are great advantages to that. So, we want you to be an entrepreneur. Hopefully you don't scare anybody. I just wish I would have known these things. So I could have done like Ryan and prepared for them versus, figuring it out in year 6 going, oh gosh, for the last 4 years, I've been building a company that I can't scale and sell. Great. I wasted 4 years doing that,
Yeah. The other thing I would say, ending on a high note, is I found myself one time in this room full of other entrepreneurs, and we spent a semester together. Okay. But what I learned more importantly was that here was a group of people that were experiencing the things that I was experiencing that I couldn't talk about anyone else. And I realized in that moment, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't an emotional wreck. This is normal that other people experience it.
Yeah.
And that was like really healing to go, oh, here's a group of people that could actually relate to what an entrepreneur experiences.
Find your tribe. If you're suffering, try to find your tribe. I've got 2 tribes, 2 groups of entrepreneur groups that help me just to hear their experiences. So yeah, great point.
Okay. It's that time. Let's see if we can ask Will a question that he doesn't know the answer to. Okay. All right. So here's the first one. What's a buyer persona?
Yeah, buyer personas. So it's just basically a more realistic articulation of whoever buys your products. So why buyer personas are kind of interesting right now, maybe for the last decade, is that it used to be buyer personas were based upon demographics. So you'd go out there and you'd figure out who's buying your product, and you'd find out that people in this age group or people with this ethnicity, they're buying your products. Well, that doesn't help creative teams better understand how to message to people. Demographics aren't very useful for marketing purposes. Helps you with placement of ads, but that's about it. So then what happens with buyer personas, they moved in more in the attitudinal. So we're going to figure out attitudinal buyer personas, where you learn about, people's wants, their needs, or their attitudes. And that way you could message specifically to these personas. You could articulate what drives these people had. Now, in the last 5 years, we've moved much farther away from attitudinal personas to more psychological or behavioral personas, which brings in not just the attitudes, but understanding the deep psychological drives of your buyers. And when you layer, your demographic data with your attitudinal data, with your buyer persona, or I guess, with your behavioral science-based motivational drivers, you get a much deeper understanding of what drives your customers to kind of listen to you, to care about you, and to act. So great question. Buyer personas help you much better message, in a way that's going to get people to really respond.
When I think about what I want to say, when I get online or something, what really started to help me was to imagine that exact person that I'm talking to. So when I was writing a piece for our blog, I needed to see that one person. That's your buyer persona that you're talking about. Once you kind of can picture that person, then your message really comes together. So excellent.
Yep.
So next one here. What are your recommendations for behavior optimized email? I'm just happy to get a dadgum email out.
There are better ways to get emails out, Steve. So hey, if you want to have behaviorally optimized emails, there's only 4 things you have to do, maybe arguably 5. The first thing is you have to, I believe, understand the psychological mind state of the person that you're messaging to. So that is in my book, Marketing to Mind States, but really it's driven by 4 different factors. The first thing is understanding somebody's aspirational goals. If you want to optimize your email, the first thing you need to do is get somebody to click on that email, to not delete that email. The way you do that is putting in somebody's aspirational goal or your buyer persona's aspirational goals into the subject line of your email. So that's the first thing I do if I want to optimize emails. Secondly, I want to create emotional fuel to act. That requires me to prime a human motivation in that email. I do that visually. So if I want to optimize my email for using behavioral sciences, I try to understand which of the 9 core motivations drive my personas to take action. Let's say it's achievement, or maybe it's security. And I find a picture to place into that email so that I can evoke that emotional desire. That gets somebody to continue reading your email. After I do that, we all know there's a lot of resistance to emails. I'm being sold to. I hate messages like this. What are they trying to get to? that's when I figure out how to frame my messages, either as I can help you get good things in life, or I can help you avoid bad things in life. And if I know that using the mind state, I can now rewrite my features, use copy to kind of frame up my features as helping you gain good things, or my company or my features can help you eliminate bad things from your life. And then lastly, emails are great, but I got to get you to click on something. I need you to click on a button that'll take you somewhere to buy or learn more or something. That requires a call to action. However, not all calls to action are the same. The thing you need to think about with call to action is two things. One, you need to tell the human mind what to do and when to do it. Buy now. Check out the page today. Tell the human mind what to do, buy, when to do it now. Create some immediacy. Secondly is around your call to action, whatever that call to action is, you want to place in what's called a trigger. We talk about these in the book. They're cognitive heuristics. Let's call it scarcity effect, or let's talk about loss aversion. There's these cognitive heuristics, or these triggers that help people make decisions fast. So if I've now created an email that's engaging, I'm excited about what the opportunity is, and you have told me what to decide or what to do and when to do it, and you've created some sort of a easy decision process using one of these triggers, I'm much more likely to press that button.
Excellent. So we haven't stumped him yet. All right, here's the last one. Let's see what this, it's about behavior marketing. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Does behavior marketing work for business to business? Will Leach?
Oh my gosh, this is probably for one of my students. So yes, I can, without a doubt, I'm telling you that behavioral marketing does work for B2B. It's not just B2C. In fact, 40% of my revenues for my companies come from B2B companies. So yes, it works. Here's the situation though. You know, if you read the book, Marketing to Mind States, the examples are often B2C, business to consumer. Why? It's an easier book to write, right? There is certainly an entire understanding of behavioral psychology and science is helping you to influence business decisions or B2B leaders, right? Here's why. At the end of the day, we are all reflections of our company. We're reflections of our company, whether it's through our culture, our bonus incentives, or the processes that we have in place for us to get a decision made. We're reflections of the company. So the way you use this information is either understand the number of decision makers that need to be influenced before somebody will buy your product. Who are those people? Then identify their mind states and hopefully work your way up through this chain until you understand these people to a point where they all want to work with you. It's tedious, I know, but so is B2B marketing. There's a lot of rewards for B2B marketing. So you know you have to go through that. Or all you have to do is do an analysis of the culture. And you can do this just by looking at the website and looking at, especially if it's a publicly traded company, looking at earnings calls and having the senior leadership talk about their goals for the company. That manifests itself inside of a culture. And if you can identify the typical mind state that is kind of indicative of that culture, you can now message to everybody through that lens. So it works. You just have to do a little extra work to either identify all the people within that chain or identify the mind state of the entire culture, and you'll still get much better marketing results.
There he is. That's why we want to read his book. That's why I say I'm the smartest guy in marketing, because I get to hang out with Will Leach all the time. And I read his book too. If you haven't read his book, people, you need to get it. It's Marketing Mind States. Got a new cover out. Will, you got it hanging around? You don't have to have your book, do you?
I always have my book hanging around. This is the new cover, guys. It's been updated for 2021. I made it simpler from the original version for 2019. Put in a few new concepts, so it is new and improved.
Will, so okay, we're convinced. You know what you're talking about. How can I read your book. Maybe I see that I need a little help implementing it in my situation. What's this Mindstate Marketing Masterclass?
Our masterclass is the way to take your Mindstate marketing to the next level. So it is a video-based course that you can find at mindstategroup.com, which will give you about 12 hours worth of activities and videos for you to go through on your own time to take the principles of the book, but apply it to your business. The way we do that is we go through a case study across the entire course called Wicked Crisps, where we built a brand from the ground up using behavioral science. So you'll see the ins and outs of how we built out a company, the logo, the design of the packaging, how to identify the mind state. All the details you need from the book are covered in the masterclass. And again, it's yours forever. So you can go back to these concepts again and again until you're an expert.
All right. Well, I think I'm ready. I'm going to sign up for I get the super special live stream master class.
That's right. You're an expert. Right. You're an expert these days, Steve. I think you're getting pretty close. You won't need me on this show too much longer, I don't think.
Great conversation, Will. You know, I was expecting to maybe tear up, share some, I fell down, I skinned my knees lessons, but we kept it dry. I think we kept it. We didn't embarrass people. We had Ryan helped. He jumped in there. A lot.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate they jumping in on this. It makes our jobs a lot easier. Thank you.
So, all right, that's another great conversation. Same time next week. Be sure to show up. I'm Steve Brown, you're a host, and this has been the Mindstate Marketing Hour. And so now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hit the outro like a good. Here we go. The Mindstate Marketing Hour every week on Thursdays. We'll see you again where we learn more about Will Leach and his insights.